Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1257B, and today's date is April 18th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, Are the Deceivers Being Deceived by Their Own Game? Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the corporate media is out there, and Trump is also out there agreeing with the corporate media that his poll numbers are way up, and he's patting himself on the back, saying, see, look. Now, what's very interesting about all of this, during his campaign, he never really looked at the poll numbers from the corporate media, because the corporate media, basically, they were manipulating the poll numbers, and he pointed that out. Now he's going along with the poll numbers, saying, yes, look, I am fantastic, everything is great. But when you look at the Gallup poll numbers, it shows that Trump has dropped 17 points since February on the question whether Americans believe he keeps his promises. And this is according to a new Gallup survey. And this is shortly after taking office. Gallup poll showed a 62% of Americans believe Trump kept his promises, but the same survey taken from April 5th to 9th showed only 45% felt the same way. So we have a little bit of a disagreement on what is going on here. And Gallup is most likely the right numbers because they are the people poll. Now, again, is Trump part of the deep state? Is he playing a game? Is he deceiving the deep state, the establishment, the central bank? Well, people are on both sides right now. I'm using all the different indicators that I'm looking at. I'm not saying that he's not part of the deep state. I'm not saying he's a savior like people are saying. I am looking at everything that he's doing right now. And for those people who say I never have any hope, I'm giving about 1% hope to this. But do I believe that he might turn, or he is part of the deep state, or the deep state has control over him? That could be. And we will find out soon enough if this is absolutely true, because if it is true, we're going to war. We have our answer. We know right there and then that the deep state has him. He's agreeing with them. He's getting us into war. The economy is collapsing. He's doing everything they want him to do. But until that point, we need to look at each and every indicator and look at what he's doing right now. And I know people are pointing out Jared Kushner. I know that they're pointing out that he's part of this whole entire system where he's now leading him into this. Well, I still have to say Trump, he's a businessman. He's been in business for a very long time. He knows how to work the system. He understands when the system is not working. He understands when you need to go bankrupt. He understands there's a point where you have to default. He knows when people are playing games with him. And right now, when we look at these indicators, we have to take all of this into consideration. And we also have to weed out a lot of the propaganda that people are pushing now. Because I noticed a lot of the propaganda all of a sudden came up as soon as the Syrian crisis hit. And the corporate media was applauding him. And then all of a sudden, everyone started to come out with all this information. But what we're seeing right now is that the poll numbers are actually down. People are not looking at him the same way as they were before. We see the White House right now, they're looking at the petition site and they're saying, we're thinking about dumping this. Now, Obama created this petition site where you went on there, you created a petition, and if it reached 100,000 signatures or something like that, they would address it. And what happened was, this was really a propaganda tool because they never did anything. And under Obama, I mean, people were filling out petitions. They got 100,000 signatures. And the petitions that challenged the administration went years without answer, while goofy like softball or more political convenient ones got a response. So this was basically created as a propaganda tool to make we the people believe that we had a say in what the government was doing. Now, the only reason to keep the petition site up is if Trump is actually going to answer these petitions. If they're not, it's a waste of time. I would like to see a petition site where they actually answer it. That'd be very nice, but I don't think it's going to happen. We see Trump is keeping his promise with America First right now. He's going to sign an executive order that aims to overhaul the H-1B visa program used by tech companies to bring in high-skilled workers to the U.S. And basically, he's putting this forth to say, listen, buy American and hire American. And a lot of these H-1B visas come from large Indian consulting firms, and they are by far the largest users of the H-1B visa program. And most of these individuals go to work for Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and we can see there's going to be a huge backlash on this because this is where most of the employees are coming from for these gigantic tech companies. Now we see Theresa May, she made a stunning announcement today where she's saying that she wants a snap election. And there's going to be a load of unhappy Labor politicians this afternoon. Even though many of them hold safe seats, we suspect that many will be updating their CVs and looking for new jobs. May's intent is to clear the decks of dissent. But there are risks. May does risk losing her overall majority. It's only 16, especially if voters respond favorably to the Liberals, who will try to turn it into a vote on Brexit. But we'll have to see what happens with all of this. But she did take everyone by surprise by doing this. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand that McCain and Graham visited Ukraine. It was on video where they said this is going to be the year of the offensive. Now, since that period of time, things have been happening in Ukraine. Yes, there was a truce deal that was signed, but we've seen this before where they signed the truce and they needed this period of time for peace. So McCain, Graham, the deep state, they are able to ramp up their military assets and plan out their attack in Ukraine. And what we're seeing right now is that there might be an offensive coming around May 9th, a day which is symbolic significance as it is not only the start of Eurovision contest hosted in Kiev this year, but also Victory Day in Russia and the former USSR. And it looks like that things are starting to ramp up right now, because what they're seeing is a huge ramp up of military assets. And we know that McCain and Graham were out there and they were telling them that, yes, this is going to be the year of the offensive. Now, we know the deep state is trying to get the world into war. They're out in Syria doing this. They're out in North Korea doing this. And it looks like they're going to try to push the agenda in Ukraine. And they're hoping that Trump goes along with this and starts the war. Now, if he is part of the deep state and he is part of the establishment now, he's definitely going to go for that. He's going to start war. If he's not, and he's playing them, well, we will see the indicators to show us that he is not part of it. And this is what we're looking at. Now, yesterday, the corporate media was out there, and they are pushing propaganda like crazy. And there was a report that came out that said U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups are heading towards North Korea. Now, they're saying that the USS Carl Vinson, that is steaming towards North Korea. Then they dispatched the Ronald Reagan, the Nimitz, and those strike groups. They are heading towards North Korea. And what we need to understand is that the corporate media, they are pushing propaganda really hard. Now, I decided let's take a look at where these ships actually are and what they're actually doing. And we see right now the USS Carl Vinson, well, this strike group is currently involved in scheduled exercises with Australian forces in the Indian Ocean, far from North Korea, according to Defense News. And we can see that, yes, this strike group sails back and forth in this area. When they talked about the Ronald Reagan and the Nimitz strike groups joining the Vinson, well, these are a little overblown, because right now the Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier is undergoing maintenance in Yokosuka, Japan, and the completion of all this maintenance is scheduled for May. So here we are in April. This ship is going nowhere right now. When we look at the Nimitz, This carrier strike group is currently off Southern California's coast, completing pre-deployment exercises. It's scheduled to replace the Vincent strike group in the Pacific waters later this spring. So even Mattis, Defense Secretary Mattis, is out there saying that the Vincent operates freely up and down the Pacific. And it's just on its way up there because that's where we thought it was most prudent to have it. And we can see right now the propaganda that's coming out and the way they're creating this illusion that all these aircraft carriers are heading towards North Korea, steaming there as fast as they possibly can because of what's happening in North Korea, just isn't true. And then we look at more propaganda coming out of the corporate media, the deep state. Remember, they need this propaganda. I mean, why should we believe them at this point? We shouldn't, because we know that they lie. We know that they use propaganda to get things done the way they want. And what they want is war. Now, they're out there saying that the Pentagon, and this is coming from The Guardian, they are going to shoot down a North Korea missile. Because Trump is so unpredictable, most likely he will do this, even though other presidents have not. Well, wouldn't this be absolutely ridiculous? First of all, North Korean missiles, they can't even fly. I know they're saying they're cyber attacking, but most likely they haven't developed a missile that actually can actually work. So why in the world would the United States government central bankers go ahead and shoot down a missile that doesn't even work to get us into war? Does it make any sense? No. The only thing that they're trying to do is make you believe that this is going to happen. Now, they might create a false flag where they say, yes, a missile was shot down, it was over, the ocean, and it came down. Just like Bloomberg put out that article that North Korea fired missiles into China, and then they retracted the story a couple hours later. That could have almost started World War III. Now, they're out there calling for these red lines in North Korea. They keep saying, well, if North Korea crosses this red line. Now remember, the deep state uses red lines. Israel uses the red line tactic. Trump, he really doesn't use red line. So right now they're saying that, well, North Korea, if they cross this red line and they shoot another missile, that is an act of war. Well, Sean Spicer said the White House was unlikely to draw a red line on North Korea. He said red lines haven't worked well in the past, and we're not going to start using them now. There's no reason for this. Now, when we look at the situation, we have to understand what's going on here. Trump fired 59 Tomahawk missiles into Syria, did really no damage inside of Syria. The deep state, the establishment, the central bankers wanted him to bring in 150,000 troops. They thought this was the chance to do this, to get rid of Assad. Trump didn't do it. He didn't bring in the troops. Basically, he went out and said, listen, our foreign policy is the same. We're going after the Islamic State. Then he dropped the mother of all bombs on the CIA tunnels and the Islamic State. Okay. Some people say, well, that just shows you that he is ready for war. Well, does it really? He flies down to Mar-a-Lago. Now, the corporate media is out saying he is the only president that has been playing golf more than any other president in the first 100 days. Well, Obama played a lot of golf. I know during the end of his term. He's also played a lot during his term. But is he really going to Mar-a-Lago to play golf all the time? Or is he using this to have private meetings because he understands that in the White House there are so many leaks that he cannot talk about certain plans? Think about it for a second. So let's take that into consideration. Now, let's talk about what has happened here. All the Russian collusion, all the spying, all that stuff has completely disappeared. He's gotten the corporate media to continually push out war propaganda after war propaganda after war propaganda. That's all they're doing right now. That's all they're focused. He got them just to focus on that. And they're coming out with incredible stories. And most of them, I would say 99.9%, they're completely untrue. And secondly, why would the U.S. telegraph that they're going to shoot down a North Korean missile? Why would they even do that? It makes no sense. Now, Mattis is out there. He confirmed deconflicting with Russia. Now, remember, he says back when the Syrian operation was happening, they're saying that, well, the U.S. is no longer talking to Russia whatsoever. The hotline closed down. Then we find out that the hotline wasn't closed down, that the hotline is open. The U.S. and Russia, they're still talking to each other. It's operational. And Defense Secretary James Mattis said that, well, we're going to work with Russia right now in defeating the Islamic State in Syria and ending the war in Yemen. Well, that's completely different. He said we continue to deconflict with Russians for safety of flight, to avoid any kind of misunderstanding or any kind of inadvertent running into each other. As the two militaries carry out strikes against targets in close proximity, we're keeping the lines of communication open. So that doesn't fit into the scenario of us going and attacking Russia, us going and attacking Syria, or going into Yemen. So the question is Trump keeping his promise and actually going after the Islamic State like he said he was going to do? And the corporate media is trying to spin this news the way they always do? Because before, when Obama was president, they spun it that we were going after the Islamic State, and the alternative media was saying that no, they weren't hitting the Islamic State, they were hitting the infrastructure in Syria. Now, the corporate media is out there saying that Trump, well, we're going after Assad. We're going after Assad. And the alternative media says, no, Trump is going after the Islamic State. Very interesting. Now, in Turkey, it turns out, from international observers, they found about 2.5 million Turkish votes, and they were possibly manipulated. Really? In the dictatorship of Erdogan, there was manipulation in the voting? Of course there was. Now, MSM was out there, and they were saying that because of the Turkish referendum, this is going to be used by Putin. He will use it to his benefit. I mean, they're just putting propaganda and more propaganda out there. They also said that Trump called Erdogan to congratulate him on this referendum. Well, first of all, the call was already scheduled in advance, and the discussion focused on Syria. It wasn't even about the referendum. If you look at the notes from the White House, and the media is up in arms over Trump's recent phone conversation with Turkish President Erdogan. Well, this is a completely different discussion, but they're trying to make it look like he called them because of the referendum, but it was already a scheduled phone call way before this. Just like the ships that are sailing towards North Korea, which they really aren't. We see coming from the moderate rebels, they are saying that the CIA told us not to attend the Russian-sponsored peace talks because we are paying you not to attend. So we can see already that the CIA, still involved in all of this, they didn't want the peace talks because their goal is always the same. Get rid of Assad, replace Assad, do whatever you have to get the war started. Now, we see that Russia, Syria, with the UN and the United States, they are planning right now to get together in Geneva to have peace talks. Now, this is kind of strange because one moment ago, we were going to invade Syria. And now, the Trump administration is looking to have peace talks in Geneva. Russia's deputy foreign minister is waiting for confirmation from Washington, and they're waiting to see when this meeting is going to take place. So if the meeting goes ahead, the talks are scheduled for April 24th. The development comes days after Trump revealed his hopes of a fresh dialogue with Russia. And remember that tweet that he put out there? Things will work out fine between the USA and Russia, and at the right time, everyone will come to their senses and there'll be lasting peace. So is he deceiving the deceiver? Is he playing some type of shell game? Because it's starting to look like that as each day passes. Now again, if all of a sudden something happens and the deep state has a false flag and he decides, you know what, we're sending in the troops, we're going to war, that's a whole different story. But again, we're going to have to look at that. But again, we need to look at everything that's going on right now. And there's a lot of noise out there. Now, the DHS chief, he is out there. This is Deputy Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly. He issued a stark warning on Tuesday, calling the risk of a terror attack on the United States as threatening today as it was on 9/11. Now, he outlined the danger posed by homegrown terrorists and foreign fighters from around the world who have traveled to Syria and Iraq with plans to return here. Haven't we heard this story before? But they're saying the threat is real, and it's on par with 9/11, which gives us another signal, because just the other day, he was telling us about a cyber threat from North Korea. Now he's talking about homegrown terrorists that are coming to America. So what this is telling us is what we've been talking about all along. This next event that is coming from the deep state, if they don't get their way, will most likely be a cyber threat from maybe North Korea. Maybe they'll include Russia. We'll have to see. And a physical attack by these homegrown terrorists to convince us that this is really happening. And we need to be prepared for all of this, because we can see what the deep state is up to, what they're planning. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.